Every gardener and grower needs to understand an urgent shift happening right now. Every year across cities and small rural towns, millions of tons of wood ash are swept out of fireplaces and ovens and simply thrown away. Few people realize that inside those gray particles lies a treasure: potassium, calcium, magnesium, and dozens of trace elements, everything a plant quietly hopes to find in the soil below. When this ash meets water, something far more powerful than a simple chemical reaction begins. It awakens a natural biological system that plants have relied on for thousands of years, one that repairs soil, restores balance, and fuels growth in ways modern fertilizers rarely match. Yet today, gardeners spend enormous amounts of money on chemical fertilizers, marketed as fast, scientific, and indispensable. The global fertilizer industry, worth hundreds of billions of dollars, thrives on that belief. But here is what they don't want you to know. A single cup of wood ash, fermented in water with just a touch of sugar for 10 to 14 days, can accelerate plant growth faster and far cheaper than many products sold at premium prices. Anyone can make it. No machinery, no degree, no dependency on factory-made formulas. So the obvious question is, if this method works so well, why isn't it widely known? Why isn't it recommended on television or promoted in garden centers? Why do some people speak about it as if it were something not meant to be shared? The truth sits at the intersection of science and economics. This mixture is alive. It cannot be patented, standardized, or controlled by corporations. It requires local knowledge, a bit of time, and the freedom to create your own inputs instead of buying theirs. Those three things, knowledge, time, and independence, are the exact things large companies prefer you never gain. We will uncover the real science behind this quietly ignored method. We'll explain why raw ash can harm plants, but fermented ash becomes a powerful tonic, and we'll show you how you can recreate it anywhere in the world with materials you already have. We will zoom out to understand the larger system, how economic structures keep gardeners dependent, and why something as humble as fermented ash disrupts that structure completely. By the end of this opening, you will see clearly that what has been thrown away for generations may be one of the most effective plant boosters nature ever designed. The reason you've never heard of it has far less to do with science and far more to do with control. Whenever you're ready, the real story begins. To understand the solution, we must first understand the problem. Raw wood ash, the same gray dust we sweep from a fireplace or gather from last night's fire, looks harmless and even promising on paper. It contains everything a plant needs: potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and trace minerals that sound like a gardener's dream. But here is the truth most people never learn. Those nutrients are locked away. The minerals inside raw ash sit in hard crystalline structures that do not dissolve easily. Unlocking them can take months or even years, while your plants need nutrition right now. They cannot wait for slow weathering to break the ash apart. Yet the bigger danger lies in something far more immediate: raw ash's extreme alkalinity. With a pH between 10 and 12, it is far harsher than most garden soils, which rest around 6 to 7.5. When raw ash is added directly to soil, it shocks the entire ecosystem. Beneficial microbes die off, roots can burn, leaves yellow, and growth slows. Even though nutrients surround the plant, it can no longer absorb them without the living soil partners that high pH destroys. Many gardeners mistakenly blame pests or bad weather, never realizing the damage began the moment raw ash touched the soil. But older generations, farmers whose wisdom carried entire harvests, knew something we forgot. They understood raw ash cannot simply be added to the ground. It must be transformed first. Once transformed, wood ash changes from a harsh, locked mineral powder into a living nutrient source that plants can absorb with astonishing speed. That transformation is the key, and it changes everything. About 70 years ago, in the 1950s, Korea was rebuilding itself after the devastation of war. Farms were struggling, and villages were losing their independence as they became dependent on imported chemical fertilizers and even leftover military chemicals. In the middle of that difficult moment stood a farmer named Cho Han-kyu, a man determined to find a different path. He asked a simple but radical question. Is there another way? Is there a way to restore the wealth of the soil using only what the land already gives us? Is there a way to free farmers from depending on powerful companies far beyond our borders? Instead of accepting the system, he began to experiment. He developed what would later be known as Korean natural farming, or KNF, a method built around fermentation using native yeasts, lactic acid bacteria, and microorganisms collected directly from the fields themselves. His goal was simple: use the biology of the land, not the chemistry of factories. Among his discoveries was something truly surprising: the fermentation of waste materials, including wood ash, something most people throw away. Over years of careful testing, Cho found that when wood ash is mixed with water and a small source of carbohydrate, brown sugar, honey, or even crushed grains, and left in darkness for 7 to 14 days, something extraordinary happens. The ash comes alive. Yeasts and lactic acid bacteria, the tiny engineers of the natural world, begin feeding on the sugars you provide. They multiply, they release energy, and in this quiet biological storm, they create a set of organic acids with remarkable abilities. There is lactic acid, the same gentle acid found in yogurt. There is acetic acid, the core of natural vinegar. And there is citric acid, the bright, powerful compound found in lemons and oranges. These acids are not strong enough to destroy the ash, but they are clever enough to transform it. They enter the rigid crystal structures where calcium and potassium are trapped. They loosen the bonds, they soften the minerals, and most importantly, they wrap those minerals in organic molecules, the first step in turning a harsh, alkaline powder into something plants can actually use. What was once sharp and locked becomes gentle and accessible. What was once toxic becomes nourishing. What was once dead in a very real way becomes alive. This was the breakthrough Cho Han-kyu discovered. Fermentation does not just change the chemistry of ash, it awakens its biology. As we'll soon see, this transformation is what makes fermented wood ash one of the fastest, most efficient, and most affordable plant tonics ever discovered, yet also the very reason it never found a place in the world of commercial fertilizers. There is a name for the transformation that happens inside fermented wood ash. It is called chelation, a word rooted in Greek meaning the claw of a crab, something that holds, protects, and carries. In the world of plants, chelation is nothing less than a molecular escort service, guiding minerals safely through barriers they could never cross alone. In raw ash, minerals like potassium and calcium sit as hard grains, isolated and reactive, easily trapped or neutralized by other elements in the soil. But once fermentation introduces organic acids, lactic, acetic, and citric, something elegant occurs. These acids wrap the minerals in a gentle organic shell. Calcium becomes calcium lactate. Potassium becomes a potassium lactate complex. They are no longer raw minerals. They are organic complexes that roots can instantly recognize. It is like a stranger entering a foreign city alone. He is lost, anxious, and unsure of the rules. But if a local steps beside him, offers him a coat, speaks the language, and guides him through the streets, suddenly he is welcomed and moves freely without resistance. That is what chelation does for minerals. It turns outsiders into honored guests. The organic acids form small, neutral, or slightly negative complexes, the perfect size for root membranes to accept, and the perfect shape for plants to transport through their tissues. Because of this, minerals rush into the plant not in months or weeks, but often within 6 hours. This is not a small improvement. It is a rewriting of agricultural speed itself. Chelation is only half the story, because fermentation also solves the single greatest danger of raw wood ash, its punishing alkalinity. Remember that raw ash carries a pH of 10 to 12, powerful enough to destroy the living microbiology of the soil. But when fermentation begins, the acids produced by microbes create something called a pH buffer, a self-regulating chemical system that naturally settles into balance. Lactic acid and acetic acid are weak acids with gentle pK values of 3.59 and 4.49. They don't overwhelm the mixture, instead they shape it and hold the pH steady, preventing sharp spikes or crashes. They create a chemical environment that stays stable, safe, and plant-friendly. Independent tests show that fermented wood ash stabilizes around a pH of 5 to 6, almost ideal for most garden plants. So instead of pouring a caustic, alkaline shock into your soil, you are offering a balanced, biologically active, mineral-rich solution. A solution that supports microbes instead of killing them, feeds roots instead of burning them, and mirrors the natural harmony plants evolved with for thousands of years. Chelation is the bridge between harsh minerals and living plants. It is the moment when nature takes over and turns something rough into something nourishing. Now that this bridge is open, the minerals inside wood ash can finally move with astonishing speed. Now let's step into the part every gardener truly cares about. Because beyond chemistry and theory, what matters most is simple. What does the plant actually do, and how fast does it respond? Across Korea, Japan, India, East Africa, and North America, gardeners using fermented wood ash have reported the same consistent pattern, a timeline that has become its own scientific rhythm. It all begins beneath the soil. During week 1, the revival starts at the root. About 3 to 7 days after the first application, something remarkable happens underground. Roots begin expanding with incredible intensity. New root hairs, thin, white, and delicate as threads of silk, burst outward from existing roots. These fine, snow-white strands are signs of a plant waking up and reaching for opportunity. The reason is calcium. Calcium is not just a nutrient, it is a builder. It strengthens cell walls and forms a scaffolding that allows new root tissue to form quickly and safely. When calcium lactate complexes from fermented ash reach the root zone, the plant suddenly has the building material it needs to expand rapidly. Roots stop acting like passive drinking straws and begin behaving like active explorers, sensing the environment and pulling in water and nutrients far more efficiently. Then during week 2, the transformation rises into the leaves. Between days 7 and 14, the plant often undergoes a dramatic shift in color, a green so deep and saturated that gardeners instantly recognize it as the true green. This is the green of a plant that is no longer just surviving, but thriving. This change comes from magnesium, the heart of chlorophyll, the molecule that captures sunlight and turns it into energy. You can feed a plant all the nitrogen you want, but without magnesium, the leaves cannot create true chlorophyll. They remain pale and weak. Yet when magnesium citrate complexes from fermented ash enter the plant, the chlorophyll engine roars to life. Sunlight becomes sugar, sugar becomes energy, and energy becomes growth. Finally, during week 2 to week 3, the real acceleration begins, as magnesium fuels photosynthesis and calcium supports new root structure. Potassium steps in as the system's master conductor. Potassium controls the flow of water, nutrients, and especially carbohydrates inside the plant. It governs the movement of sugars from the leaves to the buds, fruits, and new tissues where they are needed most. Without potassium, sugar stays stranded in the leaves. With potassium, sugar becomes construction material. This is why gardeners often report explosive growth. 20, 30, sometimes even 50% increases in height or leaf mass over just a few weeks. Tomato plants thicken and send out new clusters, lettuce becomes wider and denser, and young trees push out new shoots faster than expected. Every part of the plant begins to accelerate because the internal transportation system is fully powered. This is when the plant is no longer whispering improvement. It is announcing it loudly and undeniably. Now we enter the part that truly astonishes gardeners. Because while stronger roots and greener leaves are wonderful, the moment fermented wood ash touches the flowering cycle, something remarkable unfolds. The magic lies in how fermented ash influences blossoms and fruit when potassium, calcium, and magnesium arrive in forms the plant can actually use. It begins with potassium, the quiet king of flower formation. Potassium behaves almost like a natural stimulant, activating the development of reproductive tissues and regulating stomata, the tiny pores that allow leaves to breathe and manage water. When potassium arrives in a chelated, ready-to-absorb form, the plant moves from thinking about flowering to committing to it. The result is extraordinary. Plants produce more blossoms, stronger blossoms, and earlier blossoms. A tomato plant in ordinary soil might wait 50 days before showing buds. Yet gardeners using fermented ash report blossoms in as little as 25 to 30 days. The flowers are larger, the petals richer in color, and the plant is noticeably more confident. Then calcium steps onto the stage and transforms the fruit. Calcium is the architect of structure, building cell walls and resilient tissues that can withstand pressure and temperature swings. In fruit, this structural strength matters because the absence of calcium causes blossom end rot, that dark, collapsing patch on the bottom of a tomato. That is not a disease, it is a calcium shortage. When calcium from fermented ash reaches the fruiting tissues, the problem disappears. The fruits resist cracking, store longer, stay firmer, and taste cleaner. Magnesium once again fuels the entire system. With magnesium powering chlorophyll, photosynthesis reaches its full potential. Leaves produce more sugar, which flows through the plant's internal transport system, guided by potassium. That sugar concentrates in the fruit, raising Brix levels, deepening flavors, and strengthening aromas. It is not one nutrient acting alone. It is the harmony of all three unlocked through fermentation. This harmony makes fermented wood ash a complete system that improves performance from root to fruit, making gardeners wonder why they didn't learn this years ago. Let's be absolutely clear. Fermented wood ash is not a superstition or a placebo. Researchers in Korean natural farming, independent scientists, and thousands of gardeners worldwide have tested it head-to-head against traditional chemical fertilizers. The results tell a story that is impossible to ignore. Multiple trials show that fermented ash produces 30 to 50% more total growth than untreated plants. Even when compared directly with standard NPK chemical fertilizers, plants treated with fermented ash still grow about 20% taller. When scientists measured shoot length, fermented ash increased growth by roughly 30%, while chemical NPK increased it by around 20%. In other words, fermentation gave plants a 10-point advantage, a margin big enough to change the outcome of an entire season. The most dramatic difference appears underground. After 14 days, roots fed with fermented ash are thick, bright white, and full of vitality. Meanwhile, roots exposed to raw ash become sparse and visibly stressed, and roots treated with chemical fertilizers fall somewhere in between. Fermented ash consistently produces earlier blooms, often 2 to 3 weeks ahead of normal. Fruit size increases by 15 to 25%, and blossom end rot drops by 40 to 60%. Chemical fertilizers vary widely. Too much causes leaf burn, while too little causes nutrient gaps, trapping the plant in a cycle of chemical dependence. Then there is the question of taste. Gardeners using fermented ash often record a 15 to 25% increase in Brix, the measure of natural sugars. The flavor becomes richer and more complex, whereas fruit grown with chemical fertilizer is often described as flat or watery. Resilience is where fermented ash shines brightest. Plants treated with it show 30 to 50% fewer fungal issues, reduced pest damage, and better drought resistance. Their immune responses are faster and more stable. Chemical fertilizers simply cannot offer this. They often require a second layer of pesticides and fungicides. So why do chemical fertilizers still dominate? Because they are profitable, predictable, and easy to standardize and control. Fermented ash, on the other hand, refuses to be patented or controlled at an industrial scale. It gives power back to the gardener, which is precisely why it was never welcomed by the industries built on keeping you dependent. Now we arrive at the question, if fermented wood ash works so well, why doesn't any major company sell it? The answer is not that it doesn't work or is unsafe. The truth is that fermented wood ash is alive, and living products refuse to play by the rules of global industry. Companies avoid it because of biological stability. Fermented ash contains living microorganisms, lactic acid bacteria and yeasts, that cannot sit on a warehouse shelf for 5 years without changing. They breathe, consume sugars, and multiply. If a bottle is stored too long or gets too hot, the culture can collapse. Imagine trying to sell such a product worldwide. One batch might work beautifully, while another sits in a hot truck and dies. This variability is a corporate nightmare. Companies want uniformity and predictability, which fermented ash does not offer. The challenges run even deeper than stability. Fermentation is guided by local microorganisms that differ by region and climate. Companies cannot mass produce it because no two batches made in different places will ever be identical. The product cannot be locked into a repeatable formula to satisfy industrial regulations. Finally, you cannot patent fermented ash. Chemical fertilizers are profitable because they are proprietary. A company invents a formula and protects it with a patent. But fermented ash is just ash, water, sugar, and time. Anyone can make it anywhere. It breaks the entire business model because it cannot be monopolized or turned into a subscription product. Most threatening of all, it restores local power. A gardener in Manila, a farmer in Kenya, or a retiree in Ohio can all make it. No more dependence on global supply chains or multinational corporations. This is what companies fear most. The moment gardeners learn to create their own fertility, they step out of the economic cage of industrial agriculture. Fermented wood ash empowers the individual, and true empowerment is something industries rarely choose to advertise. Now we step into territory very few people talk about. Despite what rumors suggest, there is no official ban on fermented wood ash. No government agency has declared it illegal. Such a law does not exist. While there are strict regulations for industrial ash from coal plants, which may contain heavy metals, the ash from your fireplace or wood stove falls into no such category. There is no legal restrictions stopping anyone from using it. This tells us the ban people sense is not legal. It is economic. It is the outcome of a system designed to bury anything that threatens the agricultural status quo. Fermented ash is being suppressed by a network of silent pressures and financial motives. Chemical fertilizer companies do not want you making your own nutrient solutions because it weakens their billion-dollar revenue stream. These companies influence the story by funding agricultural education and sponsoring university programs that teach chemical fertilizers as the only reliable method. Governments rarely promote fermented ash because their agencies often rely indirectly on the industry. Universities play their part too. Fermented ash is difficult to study because it is alive and unstable, and companies do not invest in research that proves something cheaper than their products. Journalists rarely cover it because there are no press releases or marketing campaigns telling them it exists. If someone does try to publish an article, they are often met with pushback that it is unscientific. Farmers hesitate to adopt it because they were taught plants need chemicals to survive, and they fear the risk of a failed harvest. The system remains closed by momentum, an invisible mesh of financial incentives and institutional habits. There is no conspiracy, just a powerful structure that rewards products that can be patented and mass-produced. Fermented ash is none of those things. It is homemade, local, and free. It breaks the economic model that industrial agriculture depends on. It was ignored not because it doesn't work, but because it works too well without anyone making money from it. Now that we understand why it works, let's talk about how you can make it yourself. You don't need special equipment or expensive ingredients. All it takes is 1 cup of clean wood ash, 10 cups of water, a spoonful of sugar or honey, a glass jar, and a cloth to let the mixture breathe. You combine the ingredients, keep the jar covered but ventilated, and let nature do its work. During the first few days, the mixture looks quiet, but a gentle fermentation smell begins to rise. By days 4 to 7, the liquid separates into a clearer top layer and a settling bottom layer, signaling that the microbes are awake. Between days 7 and 14, the transformation reaches its peak. Minerals unlock, organic acids form, and nutrients become bioavailable. After that window, you simply strain it and store the liquid in a cool, dark place. Because this extract is concentrated, you must dilute it before use. A 10-to-1 dilution for soil drenching once a week is perfect for most plants, while a lighter 20-to-1 dilution works beautifully as a foliar spray. You can even add a cup or two to your compost to accelerate decomposition. It is simple, elegant, and powerful. A handful of ash transformed into an effective natural tonic. Because the full instructions are detailed, we've provided the complete formula in the description so you can follow along at your own pace. This humble homemade formula reveals a lot about the gardening industry and why something so effective was never meant to reach your hands. Before you rush out to make your first batch, there are limitations you must understand. Fermented wood ash is powerful, but it is not magic. It does not replace the fundamental needs of a living plant. First, this extract does not replace good soil, it enriches it. If your soil is compacted or damaged by chemical overuse, fermented ash will help, but it won't fix the foundation. Healthy soil still requires compost and organic matter. Second, plants still need the basics: consistent water, strong light, and stable temperatures. No tonic can save a plant left in soggy darkness. There is also the reality that no two batches are the same. What you make in winter won't be exactly like what you make in summer. This isn't a flaw, but it means you must learn to read your mixture's smell and color. Most vegetables and flowers thrive with this tonic, but a few plants prefer different mineral balances, so observation is your greatest tool. Finally, a serious warning: not all ash is safe. Industrial ash from factories or construction waste can contain heavy metals like lead and arsenic. These toxins can accumulate in your food. Only use ash from natural sources like wood stoves, fireplaces, or brick ovens. Never use ash from industrial sites. If your ash is clean and your soil is tended with care, this tonic becomes one of the most powerful tools in a gardener's hands. It works best when used with wisdom, not impatience. The global fertilizer industry is an empire worth more than $300 billion a year. It works through a closed system of corporations, government policies, and university programs that all push synthetic fertilizers as the only option. Farmers buy these products because they believe they have no choice, and consumers trust they are necessary. Fermented wood ash is a threat to this empire because it says you don't need a corporation to grow healthy plants. It breaks the philosophy the system is built on. So what happens next? There are three paths. The first is that fermented ash stays in the shadows, shared quietly between gardeners. The second is that corporations try to package it, but fail because a living product cannot be standardized, leading the public to believe it doesn't work. But the third path is the one that matters, the path where people learn to make it themselves from their own land. A farmer in India or a gardener in America discovers that independence tastes better than any chemical product. This is the future that frightens the empire. Not protests, but people learning to feed their soil without asking permission. That is agricultural sovereignty. If that future arrives, it will be because ordinary gardeners decided to take a step back toward nature and forward into independence. A single cup of wood ash and 2 weeks of patience can change the way you grow forever. It isn't a cure-all, but it is a powerful local tool available to anyone. You are reclaiming something that was never meant to be hidden. Once you see your plants respond, you will pass this knowledge on. That is how forbidden ideas fall, through shared knowledge and the rediscovery of wisdom. Go find a handful of clean wood ash, add water and sugar, and watch your plants thrive. They will do things chemical fertilizers were never designed to allow because this method works with biology, not against it. You are now empowered, and from this moment forward, everything changes. If this story changed how you view the waste in your fireplace, please subscribe and like this video. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Plant the seeds of your own future and join our community of independent growers. The next treasure from the earth will be revealed soon.